Usually after you've funded your emergency fund and paid off any high interest debt like credit cards, that's when you can start to get really into saving and investing after you've checked those other boxes. So please first check the emergency fund box and the debt management box. Make sure that you're solid in those areas, and then you can get into investing. Typically, the first place you're going to want to address is retirement savings. That is the biggest thing. People, we don't have a pension system in this country. Social Security is pretty minimal. It'd be hard to just retire just on Social Security. So you're pretty reliant upon yourself. Pensions are not that widely available. There are, like if you are a public school teacher, chances are you have a pension. When I have run financial plans for teachers, they often look very good because the person has a pension. So that being said, if you're kind of starting out and you're going, well, what am I going to do for a job? I like teaching. Do it. Teach. Particularly the New York City system has an amazing retirement system. That aside, um, everyone, even teachers, should be saving into retirement accounts as well. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and be like, oh, I got a pension, I'll be fine. The first stop on the retirement savings highway, let's just call it, the first rest area is IRA accounts. So there's two major kinds of IRA accounts. There are traditional, meaning the money goes in before you've paid taxes on the money. And then there's Roth. Roth is where you've already paid the taxes on the money and then you never pay taxes again on it. There are rules surrounding these things where, there's certain situations where you're allowed to deduct your traditional IRA. There's certain situations where you're not allowed to deduct your traditional IRA as your contribution. It can get a little complex. Then with Roth, and some of the rules are changing around Roth, like potentially right now, there's stuff being proposed. So some of this is definitely subject to change concerning Roth, particularly surrounding like Roth conversions. Maybe we can cover that in a further down the road type of meeting here. But if your income is under a certain amount, you could be eligible for Roth. You could also potentially do Roth conversions if your income exceeds those amounts. These are all possibilities at this point. But the Roth and the traditional IRA is kind of your first stop there. Then and you want to make sure, really try and just max it out. Like that's kind of bare minimum stuff, is to max your Roth. So, $6,000 a year. Maybe you get the catch up if you're over 50, or if you are over 50, you get the catch up. And then there's other places to save. So if you have a job with a 401k, that is a really good place to save, particularly if there is matching from your employer. I would say if there's matching from your employer, do that before you do your Roth or your traditional IRA. Make sure you're at least getting your match. And then from there, save as much as you can. Realistically, if you can max your 401k and max your Roth or IRA, you're probably all set for retirement. Like that's kind of how it's done. It's hard. Not everyone has the income to do that, but that's really how you do it. The other version of a 401k is called a 403b. Those are a very, very similar type of account, slightly different like rules that probably have no practical meaning to anyone here. The 403b functions pretty much the same as a 401k. It's provided by educational institutions, nonprofits, things like hospitals, also governments. So if you work for the city, you work for the state, you work for federal government, you will have a 403b. Same as if you work for university or hospital or a nonprofit, you will likely have a 403b. And those have the same limits for contributions as well. So really, once you've, like, let's just say theoretically, you have maxed your IRA or your Roth, you've maxed your 401k, your 403b, what do you do after that? Well, let me shift gears again a little bit. Self-employed people have some unique options for retirement savings. saving. You can save a lot of money as a self-employed person. Let's say you have an amazing year, you sell like $300,000 worth of paintings. Are you just going to like sit on that money? You're going to go like buy a Ferrari? No, you're going to hopefully set up a solo 401k or maybe a SEP IRA. Solo 401k is a newer type of retirement account available to self-employed people, and it has some very appealing attributes. So I highly recommend solo 401k. So let's say you're maxing out your retirement savings ability and you still have money available to save. That's where you can get into saving into a taxable account. So, or actually, let me step back one more time. Let's say you have children, you have a child, or you're you're planning on having a child very soon. You could start some educational savings. That's provided you have checked the box for saving for retirement. Make sure you're saving for retirement before you start saving for education. I've seen this many times where people have an emotional thing where they go, oh, my parents didn't save enough for college. I take these horrible loans. I am not going to do that to my child. I am going to make sure that college is paid for. Meanwhile, they're going to be paying your bills in retirement because you haven't saved for retirement. Save for retirement first. Your child can potentially get a loan. They can go to a less expensive school. They can work. There's a lot of things changing in educational finance right now because of what happened in the last 20 years. So I would say, focus on your retirement saving first. But let's say you check those boxes. You can then save into what's called a 529 account or Coverdell account. Both of those are tax advantaged educational savings accounts. And we can go over that another time. I want to keep this very top level right now. So let's say you're checking all those boxes, you have additional money to save, or let's say you're saving for a goal that will occur before retirement. Say you want to buy a house in 10 years. You could take that money, put it into a taxable account. And taxable accounts, the reason they're called taxable accounts is that they're not tax deferred. They're not for retirement. There's no legislation, there's no law that says this money can grow, tax deferred or tax free. So anytime that you have income in that account or you realize a gain in the account, it's taxable income to you. And that's okay. It's okay to pay taxes. It's okay to realize gains. You're making money. But those types of accounts are not really optimal for retirement. So if your number one goal is saving for retirement, save in the retirement account first. But the important thing is that a taxable account, the use of those funds is not restricted by age. So you don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half to buy the home. You can do it earlier. Again, with the caveat that, do not have money invested that you need liquidity of within 5 years. Taxable accounts also, they can be owned jointly or they can be owned singly. So you can have your spouse or partner as a joint owner on a taxable account. You can do that together. That is sometimes a good idea for estate planning purposes. Also, if something were to happen to one of you, the other person would have very easy access to that money. So sometimes it's a good idea to have both your names on the account. Sometimes if you're older, sometimes people put their child's name on the account so their child can, take over and help as needed. That is more complex stuff. And I would suggest that if you have any situation like that, that you get professional advice. Both retirement accounts and taxable accounts can have a named beneficiary on them. And actually retirement accounts you always need to name your beneficiaries. That is really helpful. If something happens to you, it will allow the money to go to your intended heirs with less of a hassle. So always make sure that you are reviewing your beneficiary designations on your accounts regularly, like once a year, once every couple of years. So those are all the account types.